I'm going to be talking to you about how to begin your investment journey. Now, investing is a very easy process, but it's also a very demanding process. Investing in itself, it's an intellectual game. I like to use the word game because it's something that a lot of people can relate to. Now, in every game, you have rules, and the rules are there first of all to protect the participants of the game, but also to ensure that everyone abides by the same standards. You know, you're trying to maintain a level of standard in the game. Now, one of the key things about investing is understanding the language. And let me start by saying this. When it comes to investing, it's kind of like the center of town. There are various ways to get to your end goal. Think about this. Wherever you are, wherever you're watching from, let's say you have a center of your town. Now, you can approach the center of your town from various directions, but in the end, when you get to the center, you know you're there. That is the whole point about investing, and investing smartly. It's not about which vehicle or investment strategy or investment option that you adopt. The question is, what is the end outcome you're looking for? And so, in the same way, I want you to see investing like a game. You're participants in the game. Now, for you to play the game to your best ability, you must understand the vocabulary. You must understand the rules. You must understand what is expected of you. More than anything, you must be very good at looking at the scoreboard. Now, the scoreboard keeps track of your performance. Now, you can play an excellent game, say, for example, in the game of football or soccer, depending on where you're watching from, what you call it. You can play a game of football for 90 minutes, and at the end, you played exceptionally well, but at the end, the scoreboard says you lost. And that's all that matters. Winston Churchill said that no matter how beautiful your strategy is, you should occasionally look at the results. So there are a few things you must do if you want to begin your investment journey. Now, here is my recommendation. And I'm going to perhaps put a few things up on the board to make it more memorable. I believe that investing should begin with understanding and education. That is how you begin your investment option. You must begin with study. And here is the word, study. I love this word because study provides you with education. And through education, you develop understanding, and through understanding and application, you develop wisdom. The essential part of all investments is all about wisdom, because wisdom is what gets you going, but also keeps you safe and secure. There are various facets to investing, and I'm going to be talking about just one part of it today. And over the next perhaps few sessions and series, I might go into a little bit more in-depth studies. But let me start by saying this. My first recommendation, if you want to begin your investment journey, is this. Never invest in something that you don't want to know a lot about. Never invest in any product or vehicle or option that you're not willing to study. And the reason is simple. If there is no passion, if there is no excitement, if there is no interest on your part, the chances that you're going to look after that investment, well, is very slim. As a matter of fact, things are changing so rapidly that I believe anyone who is not studying on a daily basis, consistently, on a daily basis, now that could be 10 minutes, that could be 50 minutes, that could be 2 hours, that could be 4 hours, it doesn't really matter. But anyone who is not studying consistently is bound to get hurt. Now, Warren Buffett is considered to be the wealthiest, but also the smartest investor we've had of the 21st century. Now, he's the second wealthiest man in the world, but if you were just dealing with investors only, then he would be considered as the wealthiest. And he said something that I've always remembered. He said, rule number one in investing, never lose money. Rule number one, And he said, rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Now, that is a philosophy that I think you should adopt. And as I go along, I'm going to share a few other things that you must consider with this, because no one ever gets it all right. There are times when you will make mistakes because maybe circumstances, the markets, the economy, demand, supply, but things don't work in your way. And it's about understanding how you protect yourself during those difficult times. But the point is this: in order for you to be a successful investor in any area, you have to have an interest in what you're invested in. And the discipline of constant and never-ending continuous growth and improvement is extremely essential. So I've chosen a number of investment paths because I have an interest in them. You will only become a successful investor if you invest in something you have an interest in. Now, understanding this particular point in time, I'm referring to you being in control of your investments. I'm not referring to you delegating that responsibility to financial advisors or stockbrokers or other people, wealth managers. I'm talking about you being in charge, you knowing where your money is going and where your money is coming from. And so let me start by saying a few things to get you started. The first question I want you to do is sit down and ask yourself, what do I want? What is the outcome I want from my investments? And I'll give you a good example. Your age plays a role in the investment choices you make. The reason I say this is because there are investment choices that are secure. There are investment choices that are safe. There are investment choices that apply a little bit more risk because they deal with growth. There are some that apply greater risks because they deal with exponential growth. Now, your age determines which of these 4 options might be suitable for you. And let me make that more practical. If you're 18-year-old, let's say you're 18 years, and you have £10,000 to invest. At 18 years old, you have enough time. If we were to go based on the expected life for a man or woman, you still have time. So you can afford to go for maybe something that is more of a growth with a little bit more risk, rather than something secure, something safe. Why? If you were to lose, say, 5,000 out of your 10,000 by age 20, assuming that you were to retire at 65, you still have 45 years to make up the correction, make up for the mistakes you've made. On the other hand, let's assume that you're 60 years. In this orb, say between 50 and 60 years. And let's assume you have 100,000 to invest. Now, because of your age, you have to be a little bit more cautious about investing because you don't have the time to regain or recoup the losses you've perhaps that befell you. So for someone who is much older, a safe and a secure investment might be better. A safe and a secure investment might pay 6%. A risk growth might pay 10 to 15%. A greater risk might pay about 25%. So the first thing you start off with is ask yourself, where am I in terms of age? Never make your investment decisions based on other people's opinions. Always base your investment decisions on yourself and where you are in life, what you have to gain or what you have to lose. The second thing you must also ask yourself is, am I making this investment decision just for myself, or does this affect the family? So if you have a family, then you have to be a little bit more cautious. Maybe you're investing for the long term of your family needs. And in this instance, you have someone who is single, only thinks about himself or herself. Someone who has a family might have a few kids and a wife. So the distribution of your investment has to be done strategically. And I'm going to talk about that very shortly. Now, the third thing you want to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of the investment? Are you trying to build wealth? So on the purpose, are you trying to build wealth in terms of income from investments? Are you trying to build what I would call a secure future in terms of long-term growth? Or in this case, are you trying to generate a secondary income stream? Now, the difference between the third and the first is, with the first, you're trying to generate income. You're trying to increase what we call your wealth ratio, which is the difference between income from your investments and your expenses. The third is, in this case, might be that perhaps you have a job and the job does not provide you with enough funds to meet your family needs. So you need some money to supplement the family, to take care of the expenses. Now, with the first option, you could be in the same category, or you could be one of those people who you have already achieved financial freedom. And therefore, you have a wealth ratio greater than 1. And so all you're trying to do is expand your means to provide more redundancy, more resilience, to allow you to live that, what I would call, more exciting lifestyle. So there has to be a purpose for your investment. What are you investing for? Are you investing for the immediate present? Are you investing for the long term? In some cases, you could also be investing so that your investment pays for your liabilities. This is one of the strategies used by the wealthy. For example, you have a desire to buy, say, an Aston Martin. You've seen the new model, you like it. Let's say in this instance you have £110,000 and you've seen the Aston Martin, you want to buy it. But you know, because you're financially intelligent, you know that as soon as you buy that car and drive it off the lot, if you were to drive back in 2 minutes and hand them back the keys, they would only offer you roughly about £82,000 for the car. The car would have lost about 25% of its value in 2 minutes just because you've driven it down the road. Now, because you're smart, you decide instead, I'm not going to buy this liability. Instead, I'm going to invest in an asset, and I'm going to have that asset build up some income so that that asset buys the liability. So my original capital remains, but I can have my liability and still have my assets. So it all varies. You've got to ask yourself, what's the purpose? What is the purpose? Now, this is where most people fall out. Number four. Number four, in my opinion, is very, very critical. And number four is, what is the outcome you want? But not about words. It's about, how would you know when you've achieved it? Now, there's so many people, this is the outcome. There's so many people who have a desire for more, but they've not defined the game in such a way that they know when they're winning. So every day, they're laboring and laboring and laboring and struggling to achieve more. Now, I'm one of those people who I believe in creation. By that, I simply mean I believe in having new things. I believe that part of our DNA is about growth. So every day we want something better. Every day we want something bigger. But I also believe that you should hold on to what you have. And don't be content. Be appreciative for what you have. But be on the lookout for something bigger. That itself in itself is okay. However, there's a tragedy that I've seen so many times in many people's lives where they lose sight of the blessings they have because they don't have gratitude. And gratitude is the key to wealth. If you don't have gratitude, you cannot enjoy material wealth. And the reason is simply because gratitude deals with the highest level of wealth, which is the spiritual level. The mental level is the second level, and the material level, which is the material level that leads to financial freedom, is the lowest level. So you can have material wealth, but if you don't have any form of spiritual wealth, you feel empty. And so you've got to define the game in such a way that is winnable so that you know when you've achieved that goal. This is the point. Set a vision of what you want. From the vision, set a goal. The goals will be broken down into fewer goals. From the goal, set a plan, then a strategy, then daily habits. You see, life is lived in a day. So every day, there should be celebration. You don't keep waiting for 20 years for you to feel that you've achieved something. You've got to set your goals in such a way that you know you're making progress. You know when you've achieved, even if it's a partial achievement of a bigger goal, but you've got to set the goal so that you know the outcomes. And the reason is simply because one of the most important lessons we learned is the power of celebrating small victories. And that gives you the inspiration to do more. It gives you the focus to create more. But you've got to start by asking yourself the simple question, what are my outcomes? Now let me make this more practical, because I think for some of you might be thinking, I don't really understand what it means by outcomes and goals. This is a good example. And I'll use this example to conclude today's session. Let's assume that your investment vision is to become financially free. Great. Let's assume in this instance you have an idea about what you need every month to be financially free. And by that statement, I mean, let's assume that in this case, you have expenses every month of £200, £2,000 rather. Those are your expenses. To become financially free, you will need investments that pay you every month, consistently without fail, a minimum of £2,000. So that if you were to then divide the income, which is 2,000, by the expenses, which is 2,000, you would have a ratio of 1. If you have a ratio of 1, then it means you're financially free. Now, in this instance, let's assume that you have an income of £2,500 instead, meaning that you have a wealth ratio in this instance of 1.25. Very simple. Actually, 1.125. Very simple. Now, what does this really do for you? Now, this simply means, actually, you must forgive me, 1.25. This simply means that in order to make this game winnable, the question is, what do you need? Okay, this is how you start doing it. You ask yourself, what investment vehicle will I need to choose in such a way that every month, by the investment of a capital or a seed, I'm going to get 2,500. That's how you start the journey. Now, let's assume in this case, you might say, let's assume that investment vehicle pays you 10% return. That's perfect. A 10% return from an investment vehicle, you get 2,500 every single month. Now, over a 12-month period, this means that you will need £30,000 from the investment. That's what the investment has to create every month. Now, if it's paying a return, a rate of return of 10%, then £30,000 divided by 10% means that you will need 300,000 from an investment. So rather, as an investment seed, you're going to have to build up your capital, your investment portfolio, until it gets to 300,000, and then you invest that 300,000 in an investment that pays you 10%, that gives you 30,000. If for whatever reason, let's just say for whatever reason, this was 8%, just go with me on this, for example, then it would mean that you would need, divided by 8%, you would need about 320,000 as capital. You're going to have to build up your investment up to that point. The 300,000 or the 320,000, depending on the rate of return you've chosen, becomes your target. So now you know in your heart, I have to build up my portfolio up to 300,000, and then take that 300,000, put in an investment that pays a minimum of 8 to 10%, and that will guarantee me £30,000 per year or £2,500 per month. Now that is defining the outcome. So this means when you start your investment journey, when you achieve 300,000, now it's time to recognize that you've achieved a milestone. You can reset the bar so it's much bigger, but you celebrate achieving your goal. Most people make this mistake of never setting this target, and therefore they achieve much more. They get to 1 million, they get to 2 million, and they're still not happy. And they're still financially dependent because they never sat down and asked themselves the simple question, how would I know when I begin to win? Now, I hope these 4 or 5 questions that I've shared with you have helped you think differently about investment. See, investment is not something that you just jump into without great thoughts. It requires thinking, and all of us have the ability to think. Unfortunately, some of us think occasionally. Sometimes we only think when we have to, just like think about paying taxes. We have to pay taxes, and left for us, we would never pay taxes, but because we have to, then it gets paid. So what I want to suggest to you is this. I want you to sit down with yourself and ask yourself some of the questions that I've shared with you and jot down the answers. And from the answers you have, you might start to find some really important ways that you can start to change your financial destiny. I want to wish you the best, whatever your decision might be. Take care. God bless.